Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, the second part thereof now for the 14th of March 2026. We're going to look through the hits and losses. Sorry, this is a bit late. I had football engagements, son's playing football. Oscar in the D-League, first game back since all the waterlogged pitches, and we've had rain incessantly for 2 months. First game back, they win 5-2. Oscar scores 2 goals and I think gets a couple of assists as well. So happy with that. And then we watch Finn play. Oh my goodness. So he plays up in the A-League, and that was a hotly contested match. I'm going to tell you anyway. I know you don't care, but my goodness, really, parents are getting pretty heated on the sidelines. Referee was pretty dodgy. 2 red cards for each side. The Finn scored to equalize for 3. We were 2-0 down, got it back to 3-3, and then in the last kick of the game there's a red card, free kick on the corner flag basically, so it's like a corner, and one of our guys scores from basically the corner flag, scores a goal with essentially a corner but a free kick. We went nuts. It was, what a game, real bruising encounter. So I'm totally happy with that, and I'm going to link this back to Ukraine, and now I'm taking that kind of upbeatness back to what's been going on in Ukraine, where I think, honestly, every day is a gift, is an FP2 Christmas time. FP1, FP2 drones are just hammering the Russians. So we're going to look at a couple of ferries that have been taken out by the looks of it. They deliver military equipment across the Kerch Strait. I think it's a tanker that may have been hit. Zaporizhzhia, I think, is being struck at the moment, possibly with missiles. We've had Firepoint announcing they can make as many flamingos as you like when they get the new engine up and running, production of that up and running. We have trains being struck. We have Iskander launchers being struck, just about to fire. Really significant stuff happening on a nightly basis. And Russia at the same time had a huge night of missiles and drones, and Ukraine did a really good job of intercepting them. I'm feeling upbeat at the moment about what Ukraine is able to achieve, and it all comes down to these drones and missiles and the scale of production. Before we get into those details, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Really does make a difference. Trying to make it to 100,000 subscribers, and a good percentage of you watching this at the moment are not subscribers to the channel, and I'll just really implore you to subscribe. It's just a clicking on the bell icon, select all rather than personalized, and you're away. And for those who have already done so, legends one and all. Okay, let's get into the Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course, to these, and we have some pretty decent numbers in a couple of categories. Artillery, yet again, 52. Vehicles and fuel tanks, 180, typically high there. And then we have 810 personnel loss, so in the 800s for the second day in a row. 4 tanks, pretty typically fairly low. 10 armored combat vehicles, that's okay, comparatively speaking these days. And 1 multiple launch rocket system, 1 air defense system. They do seem to be losing an awful lot of air defense systems and radars at the moment. And I just wonder if the amount of videos we're seeing seems to be higher than the amount of air defense systems that are being marked down on a daily basis. But anyway, 2,147 operational tactical drones is fairly decent there too. Syrskyi, the commander-in-chief, has said today that after visiting the southern operational zone, the Ukrainian defense forces are holding the designated lines, destroying the enemy, gradually moving forward and fighting to liberate settlements. So there's this sense that they are moving forward, but a lot slower now, because the Russians are now, or the Ukrainians are meeting the Russians in their established defensive lines rather than clearing out grey zones. So they are still making gains, but it will be more difficult. Now, we get another one of these outbursts from a Russian mill blogger here. German Sadulev here says, situation on the front is dire, says this Russian. The enemy has once again gained superiority in the lower skies. Their drones have become numerous. We keep hearing this, but there's another one, and their quality has changed again. Many drones are using fiber optics, radio drones have changed frequencies, are using mother drones, and so on. our electronic warfare isn't helping, and even our drone detectors aren't signaling. The enemy is flying in flocks of several hundred drones in swarms and using AI. The enemy is currently isolating the front lines in the entire combat zone. There are no logistics. Delivering supplies, evacuating the wounded, and carrying out rotations are mortally dangerous tasks. In many areas, after the isolation, drone fire strikes begin, followed by a counterattack. The enemy is recapturing its positions. The risk of a major breakthrough cannot be ruled out. Many military personnel say the enemy is preparing a repeat of the autumn of 2022 when we lost vast territories. But this time, the defeat could be even worse. Organizational and technical countermeasures against drones are urgently needed, new solutions. If the generals in stripes don't put new decisions into effect now, tomorrow will be too late for them too. Really desperate statements there from these Russians, and this is happening day after day. It does seem like the Ukrainians do have a drone advantage on the contact line, and I've seen a couple of rumors that the Ukrainians may actually be amassing enough forces for a major attack at somewhere at some point, but then these are just rumors usually coming from the Russians, to be perfectly honest, and they often do that kind of dooming. Loads of stuff getting taken out as well. So this is Ukraine's 429th Achilles Brigade recently struck 5 Russian Pantsir-S1 self-propelled air defense missiles and gun systems in the Belgorod region. And so, this is what I'm talking about when you see the odd air defense systems being added. Occasionally there are some spikes. I mean, we have seen consistent numbers in air defense, to be honest, but the videos seem to outdo the numbers. I mean, quite incredible. 5 Pantsirs getting taken out in Belgorod. Dimko's Zhlutenko says more Russian air defense pieces obliterated, 100% coordinated campaign to delete them en masse. What's next, fellas? So this speaks to the idea that there's this explicit attempt to take out air defense, and the question is, for what end? Right, 429th Brigade Achilles hit 5 Pantsir-S1 air defense system in a Belgorod axis. The Pantsir-S1 is used for close-range defense of civilian and military facilities against aerial attacks. In simple terms, it's used as an air defense system. The cost of one such complex is approximately $14 million. But again, it's not just the monetary value; it's a functional value. Especially if, for all the money in the world, they can't produce as many as they need. Video here of Ukraine hitting 2 trains. The occupiers used to transport stolen goods and military equipment, says Tim White. It happened on the occupied part of Zaporizhzhia. A drone struck the front locomotive, stopping the train. That allowed drone pilots to hit the second locomotive sent to rescue it. And that's not the first time we've seen a similar sort of thing happening. So hitting the train that comes to help the train. So here's a longer version of the video. Let's have a look to see what we can work out from this. So drones, I don't know what type of drone this is. Possibly not an FP2 drone. It seems to have a different interface here, but it's certainly more stable than a quadcopter by the looks of it. I don't know, trying to work out whether it's a fixed wing drone or not. Anyway, here it is. Or is it? I can't remember. It might be a heavy bomber drone. I'm sure I've read somewhere that heavy bomber drones are doing this. Let's have a look. And making sure it is, it's a FPV drone, or it's not a bomber drone. Sorry, it is some form of kamikaze drone, one-way attack drone. There it is, striking. Oh, you can see it here. It's a sizable drone that looks like a fixed wing drone, doesn't it? And then you've got a big explosion just at the back end of the locomotive, the front of the train. And one presumes that immobilizes the train, ready for a second drone to then come in. And oh no, this is supposedly on the train that's sent to then help the other train. And this drone again with a spotter drone hitting slightly further forward there on the locomotive, and that's going to be causing quite a bit of damage. This looks to be a drone with quite a bit of firepower, quite a serious payload there. Although I have to say, most of the explosion is of the drone itself, and then actually, so all that fiery area there is left behind, that smoke. I'd assume that has immobilized the train. It'll be a significant explosion there, but it doesn't. The train doesn't stay on fire by the looks of it. Then we hear, so the 2 trains there taken out, significant. Ukrainian SBS operators bagged 4 rare Merlin aircraft, a Buk M1, and a Nebo radar on Friday the 13th. So this we have heard about, but this is the video of what I reported yesterday. Although I think we had the Merlin drones, which are expensive $300,000 reconnaissance drones, army level Merlin VR reconnaissance planes or drones also taken out near Kalibrs. So here we have on Friday the 21 March the 1st to 13th, the SBS birds have downed 21 Russian air defense elements. 21 in the month of March just for the SBS is the claim there. I talked about this yesterday in a separate video where I said, really, I think we're reaching a tipping point now. Is this a turning point in the war? And I really genuinely believe that. So today's video just compounds what I was talking about yesterday, where you've got more high value equipment, although this is from Friday, but we just got confirmation Friday, and then what happened last night. So this, I think this is Thursday night going into Friday morning, if you like. So the early part of the Friday day still being nighttime, and then we've got stuff Friday night into Saturday morning that we'll be reporting on further to this. This is really high value equipment, and here is another air defense system that's a Buk by the looks of it, taken out there. And then we have the Merlins that we saw there. I showed you a couple of them getting taken out yesterday. Here is a montage or a side-by-side of 4 getting taken out. And that is very an expensive set of losses for the Russians. But yeah, loads of high-value equipment just getting shellacked night in, night out. The Ukrainians are super busy at the moment. And I'm here for it. Here is something we don't see too often these days. Gimlers, a guided multiple launch rocket system, strike lights. So the HIMARS taking out a Russian truck and troops on the Eastern Front, catching them during an active ammunition transfer. This is going to be a fairly high value strike because you've got personnel, you've got 2 logistics lorries, 2 trucks here, and then you've got the ammunition that's being swapped from one truck to another and being looked at by the Ukrainians and then hit by a HIMARS. And here comes the HIMARS strike. There you go. Huge explosion there. Although it's not bang on those trucks, by the looks of it, it hit the building next to it. It's difficult to work out the battle damage assessment from that, but it certainly is a HIMARS strike that has had something to say about that ammunition transfer. Then it's just so much going on. Tim White says here, a lot of good news for Ukraine to report. I've been writing each day about attacks on Crimea, Krasnodar, and between the 2 overnight, Russian boats were hit. The vessels, the Slavyanin and Avangard, used to ferry equipment over, are both damaged. This is very important. There are very few, certainly, I don't think these are railway ships, but the Ukrainians went and systematically took out railway ships that would take out. So with the Kerch Bridge, when that was struck, you remember the big lorry that exploded and it caused the train full of fuel to catch fire and explode. And it essentially, they could fix up the road side, but the railway, I still don't know if they can use the railway line going into across the Kerch Bridge. So what they were doing is they were transporting railway cargo. They'd put the railway trains, you would send them, I guess the ship would connect itself to the railway that comes off some kind of jetty or whatever, and then you'd roll on the wagons to the ship, and then that ship would go across the other side, and then it'd roll off onto the train tracks the other side. But these are very particular ferries, and the Ukrainians took out, I think, the 3 that the Russians had, and you can't just quickly replace those ferries. These look like genuine cargo ships that do the similar, but with typical kind of, I guess, containers or cars, vehicles, military equipment, but not railway stuff. Anyway, it looks like they were targeted last night as well. Fire damage is also inflicted on infrastructure at the Kavkaz port in the same area. We'll come to a lot of this later in Krasnodar region near the Crimea Bridge. A little further down the coast, it's now confirmed that a Greek tanker has just been hit off Novorossiysk, presumably by a Ukrainian drone. No one on board the Moran Homer was injured. Greece's government has linked the attack to easing of Russian sanctions. So that has been struck possibly in Novorossiysk. One of the latest, in fact, is this. I don't know. That was earlier, and then a missile attack is reported in Novorossiysk, Russia. Firepoint CEO Denis Shtillerman hinted that a Russian tanker might have been hit. That's more recent than the claim we were just going through, but I don't know. It could be that that's the Greek tanker operating, on behalf of Russia effectively, or whether that is a separate tanker that's been hit. Whatever. There's a lot going on at the moment. So here's just a bit more information. Shtillerman saying a Greek tanker was attacked at sea en route to Novorossiysk. It was attacked by an unknown object in the Black Sea near Novorossiysk, 14 nautical miles from the port outside Russian territorial waters, while awaiting permission to enter the Caspian Pipeline Consortium terminal. Okay, and by the way, there's a lot more stuff that we're going to look at in the hit strikes section of stuff getting blown up. So honestly, that's just like less than half of it. Here, I thought this was an interesting video. Okay, it's a tank getting taken out by drones, but actually what this signifies is the number of drones you might need to take out a tank. This tank is disguised, obviously, but once you find it, you know where it is, you hit it, you got to break through the netting with one drone. Okay, then the second drone comes in, has a bit of a pop. Third drone, as the covering is getting more and more destroyed, third drone comes in and tries to hit it. They all hit at the same place. They all seem to like going for that hatch near the front of the, near the where the turret joins to the hull, and each drone here is attempting to hit that same place. You've got the tank on fire there, and then this next one goes in, and we see it as another drone comes towards it, and then it's smoking there in the distance. So one presumes that that tank has been taken out, but it just shows you how many drones you might need to do the work. Now, then we hear that Russians near Trypilska Spit have supposedly taken out an unmanned surface vessel. They claimed, I guess originally it was a Ukrainian one. Turns out they've taken one of their own ones out. This is an incident of friendly fire of their own unmanned boats with an FPV drone, and they're joyfully howling about how they have obtained this remarkable. But unfortunately for the Russians, they've taken out their own USV there. What that does show is that the Russians are using unmanned surface vehicles in the same sort of area, or in the same sort of area Ukrainians, from where the Ukrainians send them from, I guess. Now, Freedom of Russia Legion claims that resistance forces sabotage a railway around an important munitions plant. The Plastmass in Kopeisk manufactures artillery ammunition, shells, and explosive. Trains bring components in and take the end products to the front lines. But the Atesh group, Freedom of Russia group has had something to say about that. Okay, moving on to distance strikes. So last night, the Russians had a significant attack on Ukraine. Before we talk about that, let's remind ourselves that Ukraine, with a bunch of Storm Shadow missiles, hit a plant in Bryansk recently, that microelectronics plant that they absolutely took out. They hit it in the daytime, and obviously workers will have been casualties there. Now, Russia summons the UK and French ambassadors. I guess they don't know whether it's a Storm Shadow or Scalpel. Maybe it's both. So they summoned the UK and French ambassadors to explain the military, the strikes on the military-linked plant. Moscow demands a response and unequivocal condemnation of the attack. And of course, that attack was a military-industrial complex plant. It was a legitimate target. It is absolutely justifiable for the Ukrainians to be hitting that plant. The UK official told the Kyiv Independent that Britain's support reflects Ukraine's clear right of self-defense against Russia's illegal attacks. So sit and swivel, mate. Now, I'm showing you this. So Russia complain that the Ukrainians have used UK, British and French missiles to do something that they deem is some kind of war crime. And it's not. And yet at the same time, this happens same day. Horrific Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians. Russian forces struck near a passenger bus in Kyiv region with a missile reportedly of the Iskander type. The driver and 2 passengers were killed. 4 others, 3 women and a man, were injured. A few days ago, Russians carried out a drone strike on a passenger bus in Kherson, destroying it. 20 people were injured, including a 17-year-old teenager. This is becoming a trend in Russian attacks. It's very worrying. How dare the Russians have the audacity to summon the British and French ambassadors, while at the same time they themselves are responsible for some horrific attacks on a consistent basis. Good news in terms of energy rebuilding. Ukraine has restored 3.5 gigawatts out of 9 gigawatts of lost capacity, according to Energy Minister Denis Shmyhal. The plans also include the restoration of another 4 gigawatts, including more than 2 gigawatts by the end of May. Absolutely incredible. They really need this, and that is superb. Now, it could be that the Russians are not going to be focusing on energy now that winter is over, and that gives Ukraine a chance in this kind of Sisyphean way to roll that boulder back up the hill, only for it to be blown up at a later point. But they need to do that. You know, it is one of those tasks that almost looks pointless, but it's not pointless, because you regenerate that energy and you give energy back to your military industrial complex, to your commercial sector and industrial sector. They need it. It's desperate. Ukraine needs energy, right? And to rebuild it at this rate is pretty incredible. In addition, the state is developing distributed generation. Since the beginning of the full-scale war, 1.5 gigawatts of such capacities have been introduced, and in 2026 they plan to add another 1.5 gigawatts. Equipment for the restoration of the energy system is also received by Ukraine from partners in Latvia, Germany and Austria. Really good to hear there. They'll obviously be working very carefully on how to be able to generate an energy in a sustainable manner that is also protected from consistent strikes from Russia. Such a good cup of tea. Thanks to the missus for that. Right, then we have what took place last night. So a huge number of missiles, really, although not actually compared to the beginning of the war, but for this point in the war, this is a lot of missiles and a lot of drones. Again, not as many drones as we've seen previously. So I definitely think the Russian ability to manufacture, store and fire drones and missiles has been affected. Russia launched a large-scale missile and drone attack overnight. 430 drones were sent into Ukraine, 402 of which were intercepted, which is actually not a bad interception rate. I think Tim White says that's a 93.5% interception rate on that many drones. That's excellent. So you get 28 drones there getting through. You've got 1 out of the 3 M22 Zircon cruise missiles. These are very quick, I think, cruise missiles that are much harder to shoot down. You've got 13 Iskander M or S-400 ballistic missiles sent, 7 of them taken out. That's not bad. So 6 ballistic missiles got through, all 25 Kalibr cruise missiles taken out, all 24 KH-101 cruise missiles taken out. Ukrainians are claiming they've taken out 100% of the cruise missiles, and that is somewhat true if you're talking about your bog standard kind of cruise missiles. When you start getting more funky stealth missiles like the KH-59, 69, they sent 4 of those in and 1 was intercepted. So you've got 3 of those. You've got 1 Zircon, so 4 funky cruise missiles, and then 6 Iskander M or similar ballistics getting through. Still quite a lot of ordnance getting through, but considering what was sent, that's a really good night at the office for the Ukrainian air defense. Most of the focus was on the Kyiv area, a little bit around the Kharkiv Oblast, a little bit close to the front line. That's going to be, I don't know, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, that kind of area. You got Odessa, south of Odessa, actually, getting a little bit of attention. And then somewhere between Odessa and Mykolaiv, there, Odessa and Kherson, you got some more attention being given to there. I don't know what with is it. I think all of these missiles here, those look like Iskanders going from Crimea to Kyiv. You've got some other funky missiles up here, and then a number of cruise missiles coming from the Black Sea area. And that's interesting. A lot of cruise missiles look to be air launched. How are these? Oh, it depends what missiles they are, actually. Yeah, I can't. It's not the KH-101. Just trying to read at the bottom what they are, these missiles. Anyway, KPM-6 by the looks of it, whatever they are. It could be those, that green. Anyway, you get the points. Busy night for the Ukrainian air defense. Now, moving on to another source here. It's rendering, unfortunately. We tend to forget the impressive interception rates. They aren't that exceptional, thanks to the exceptional air defense. So we take it for granted, essentially, how when the Ukrainians do well with air defense, how well they do. What is impressive is how unnoticeable the second largest missile attack was. So this was a huge missile attack. Now, it's not, I don't know what the metrics of measuring that would be. I don't know. It's not the second largest missile attack. I'm pretty sure of that, but it might be this year or in recent times. I don't know. Ballistics include everything that used to be impossible to intercept: Onyx, Iskander, Kinzhal. So defining some of these missiles is sometimes quite variable. It's quite useful. This is going back. So that is going back to June last year by the looks of it. But anyway, so from June last year, this the second biggest attack, we had mainly Kalibrs were a large proportion there, KH-101s, and all of those were shot down. So that's really significant for the Ukrainians there. You are seeing more Iskanders these days than earlier in the war. They've really ramped up the production and the firing of Iskanders. Here we have ballistic missile interception rates, and you can see that they are firing a lot more ballistics. And actually, if you to take this graph further back, the number of ballistics they're firing now far outstrips what they were doing earlier on in the war. Cruise missile interception rate. You can see the regularity of the cruise missiles there. I think that's a pretty good indication. Well, fairly recently, there's been, when these are closer together, obviously they're firing them more frequently, but that's that. So now let's have a look at some interceptions of these missiles, of these drones. Actually, 16 enemy strike drones were shot down on the night of March the 14th, so last night, by soldiers of the drone interceptor groups of the 208th Anti-Aircraft Missile Kherson Brigade. One then presumes that these were all, in fact, let's have just to go back to the map, these were all in the Kherson area, which would mean that, these drones flying over Kherson in this kind of area, they were shot down and intercepted. Here we have 16 strike drones being taken out by one unit here. That's very good to see. That looks like a Wild Hornet video, that first one. The second one, not sure. This is Wild Hornet. Pretty sure. That icon in the middle, there, that one, that indicates it's a Wild Hornet. It's probably a Sting drone taking out yet another Shahed. So some successes there for the Ukrainians. As Tim White said, 93.5% interception rate for Shaheds. That's pretty decent. Now, what happened? 4 deaths known, and they came from the Kyiv region, different areas. Brovary, again, 3 killed there. It was under a lot of sustained focus. There were some miraculous escapes. A family ran through flames after a drone caught the roof of their home on fire. Another place in Kyiv badly Kyiv region badly hit is the town of Ukrainka on the banks of Dnipro, south of the capital. Photos show the school damaged as well as many apartments. We've had kindergartens being hit as well. All the usual sorts of images you would expect with such a wide-scale attack. Energy sector was Russia's main target, but happy to accidentally take out apartments and civilians too. Dawn was just breaking as missiles rained down on Ukraine. Power plants were attacked, especially in Kyiv region, after where these photos are from. 8,000 are without gas in the Kyiv area, so you can see probably some kind of gas infrastructure, but maybe not, maybe just a house on fire there. A dramatic video from north of Dnipro. This is quite incredible, where a Shahed drone fell just 30 meters from air defenders of the Ukraine's state border guard. The shockwave threw one soldier out of the vehicle, but they all survived. Incredible. And actually showed quite a sound of them shooting this down. What you do, you see the amount of lead being pumped into the air. They obviously hit it, and it has fallen down. It's quite an explosion. You see the explosive payload of the Shahed drones. Now, when I go out to my car in the morning, I get pretty angry if the birds have been sitting on the annoyingly positioned telegraph wire above our driveway and the birds crap on my car. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, it sucks. Just stop it. Just pack it in. What I don't do when I walk out in the morning is go, oh, look, there's another 450 kilogram warhead from a Russian KH-101 cruise missile on my roof. Come on, guys. Pack it in. Pack it in. I've got to clean the roof again. Anyway, living in Kyiv is slightly different than living on the south coast of the UK. So Ukraine's Air Force shot down every KH-101 and Kalibr cruise missile fired in today's attack, according to Air Force spokesman Yuri Ikhnat. He described a 100% interception rate on these cruise missiles as extremely rare, although that's a Shahed drone there being chased by an interceptor drone. He's happy with the interception of these cruise missiles, and it turns out that do I not have it? So I hear that I've got it somewhere else. I've missed it. Maybe we'll come to it. Apparently, F-16s were largely responsible for the interception of those KH cruise missiles. The F-16s obviously doing a good defensive job. Russia struck Kyiv's energy infrastructure overnight, hitting the Trypilska power plant and a substation linking the capital to Rivne nuclear power plant. Air defense downed 58 missiles and 402 drones. 4 people were killed and 10 wounded in Brovary. Emergency blackouts imposed on Kyiv or in Kyiv. So more elements, more examples of the damage being caused by Russian missiles and drones. Russian drones struck a train in the Kharkiv regions of both sides going for the trains. A driver and his assistant were injured. And there we can see some images of burning trains, just in case you didn't know what they look like. Okay, then we're going to go on to, well, we're going to start with what I talked about yesterday in a separate video. I'm not going to completely go over that, but I will just reference it again. If you haven't seen my video about this being a turning point in the war, please go and watch it. My point is that FP1 and FP2 drones are now being made at such a scale that they are outnumbering the Russian one-way attack drones being sent on average every night. So last night is obviously going to skew the average upwards, but that's what you get. You get sort of anywhere between, I don't know, 80 and 180 drones being sent on a nightly basis by the Russians. And then once a week, you get a whole bunch more. And then it kind of settles down. They've been equating it to well, don't really worry about the numbers, because I don't think they're massively accurate for a whole bunch of reasons. But the idea is that Ukraine appear to have reached at least parity with these one-way attack drones. So the Ukrainians using FP1s, FP2s, Lyutis, whatever drones, loads of different ones, Beavers and whatever. The Russians use their Shaheds, their Garans, their Gerberers, and their own different drones. The Izdeli, I think, is one other. And I also speculated, and someone confirmed this, Jason confirmed it in the thread yesterday. I claimed that the Ukrainian drones were more effective, more efficient. They are more accurate. And therefore, it's not just about looking at how many drones you're sending, but also whether your drones are 30 to 40 to 45% more effective than the Russian drones, which is what the claim appears to be. So if you're firing more drones than the Russians and your drones are better at doing what you want them to do, then you then start having the advantage. So we have seen a shift now, I think, and it is really biting. It is really hurting the Russians. So now we're going to go through, well, actually, first we're going to look at, as well as drones, the Ukrainians have a lot more missiles to use. Here's an FP5, the Flamingo missile. Now it says the Iskander here costs $700,000. I wonder about that cost of Iskander missile. Let's work that out. Helps if I was actually typing in a field. Cost of Iskander missile, because I wonder about 700,000. Maybe it is. Yeah, some even less than that. But okay. Estimated unit cost of a single Iskander M generally ranges between 2 and 3 million. So that's what I thought, because I've looked at this before, but then we've got all sorts of, and upgrade. It depends which version you have. You have internal production estimates. Some analysts suggest the actual production cost to the Russian state could be as low as $400,000 to $500,000. And yeah, that's the thing. So you could say they cost like 3 million, and that's what, if you want to buy them off the Russians, then well, that's 3 million, thanks. The actual cost of the Russian state for these missiles, they're claiming here like 400,000 to 500,000, here 700,000. It's anywhere between 400,000 and 3 million, essentially. The Flamingo costs 500,000. We produce 3 missiles a day, says Stillerman from CEO. Sorry, from Firepoint, the chief designer, I think he's called now. I often see him as a CEO, but also as chief designer. Once we complete our own engine, so at the moment they use these old jet engines, like aircraft jet engines, and all they need is like 5 hours of flight out of them, and then they can use them. But they're struggling to get hold of those engines, and they're going to run out of them at some point. So they're working furiously on manufacturing their own, and once they do that, we'll be able to produce as many as the Ministry of Defense can afford. And that's the thing. Like, it's just about the money in the end. Sometimes for these weapons, it's like our production potential is really, really significant, and that's why they can make these drones for the Middle East. It's like, well, we're not fulfilling our potential here because just simply there isn't the money to send in the orders. But if they already 3 a day Flamingos, the FP5s, imagine you could get 10 of those a day, as well as the FP1s, your FP2s, and all sorts of other stuff. Large-scale attack on the enemy's military infrastructure and logistical hubs was carried out that night, I think last night. A total of 10 hits covering the territory of temporarily occupied Crimea, frontline zones, and deep rear of the Russian Federation. So we had a Nebo U, another one, radar station getting taken out in Crimea. That's really super expensive. Might be one that you saw earlier in the montage. S-300 radar in Donetsk. In the Iskander launcher and warehouse in Crimea were hit. We're going to look in a bit more detail at that because we've got imagery of that. Slavanian ferry was disabled. Avangard vessel was damaged. Maran Homa tanker and a Kavkaz port were attacked. Hits on the Trypilska oil refinery and the Maykop airfield in Ajia. A very busy night for the Ukrainians. So Iskander launcher, Nebo U radar, S-300 radar, enemy KSP were hit. Area of concentration of the unit of the separate enemy missile brigade equipped with Iskander in the Kurotne region, as well as the Iskander operational tactical missile complex launcher near Vishneve in Crimea, taken out. In addition, the Ukrainian military struck enemy air defense assets, in particular Nebo U radar station Trypilska in Crimea and the S-300 complex near Sadove. So Sadove is that's Sadove. I don't know where that is exactly in Donetsk. Anyway, a number of enemy command and observation posts were also hit, in particular one of the drone units in the Volodyrsk area, command and observation posts in Grafska and Kamenchik as well in Donetsk. So really busy. Then we have this, and I think this is different, right? So this is more stuff getting taken out. So areas of concentration of manpower, artillery, and military logistics facilities of the enemy were hit. Area of concentration of enemy manpower in the Novomikhailivka area in Zaporizhzhia was hit, as well as an artillery gun and a firing position at Zeleny. In addition, the area of concentration of enemy manpower in Shakhtarsk confirmed to have been hit, as well as a logistics warehouse in Berdyansk, repair unit and logistics warehouse in the enemy in the Andriivka area that was hit. In addition, the destruction of 5 enemy vehicles, and additionally confirmed as a result of the destruction of an ammunition depot in the Shiroka Balka area. I reported that yesterday, and then they were trying to get a load of the equipment out of the ammunition depot, and the Ukrainians subsequently destroyed the vehicles that were doing that some way away, I believe, from the ammunition depot. And those 5 vehicles there mentioned, I think, refer to those. Now, let's talk about this. This is vital, by the way. I want to see Iskander launches getting hit. It's got to be at near the top of your list. SSO hit. Russian Iskanders preparing to launch missiles at Ukrainian cities. One Iskander launcher was destroyed near the village of Vishneve in Crimea. The launcher was equipped with missiles and was serviced by a crew. Let's go and look at what the Ukrainians were able to achieve in this context. So you can see battle damage assessment, clear that this launcher and no doubt missiles. Some are saying, it was just about to launch missiles and it was taken out. You can see a vehicle there getting out of dodge at the bottom here. Run away as the system has been taken out. It's on fire down at the bottom there. And then we've got some other kind of facility being struck by the Ukrainians with multiple drones. This is now the one producer 3rd drone hitting. Obviously a high value target that they really, really want to take out. But you got the Iskander M at the beginning there, possibly with a crew, equipped with missiles, serviced by a crew. So good news for the Ukrainians there. I think that's a high value piece of kit to take out. Okay, Russian war blogger again complains. So we've had complaints about the low skies yet again, and that extra one I've just read to you earlier, on top of all the ones I've read to you for the last few days. And now we have a Russian war blogger complaining that Ukrainian drones can hit targets 100 kilometers behind the front lines using tech that Russian drone units can't occupy. So part of the point yesterday about this potentially being a turning point for the Ukrainians, one point I probably didn't say, I don't think I said it, but a couple of you pointed out, is that the Russians will be trying to catch up, as both sides do whenever the other side has some kind of asymmetry, there's some kind of advantage. It doesn't take long to catch up, all other things remaining equal. So when it comes to Ukraine's ability to produce at scale a bunch of decent drones like the FP1 and FP2 that have good range and good payload, that's not rocket science, although it almost exactly is. Literally is rocket science. Bad metaphor. But the Russians conceptually can do exactly the same, right? How long will Ukraine be able to maintain an advantage in production and in terms of the tech on these drones over the Russians? Clarifying, the enemy has the capability, so the Ukrainians have the capability to hit with FPV at 100 kilometers beyond the line of contact. Now, I don't know if this means FPV, like little FPV drones that are using motherships, or what you've seen for the last few videos, these montages of drones that act like FPV drones because they're first-person view drones, but they're bigger fixed-wing drones that can fly much deeper into the rear, such as we saw hitting the trains earlier in the video. So the enemy has a capability to hit with FPV at 100 kilometers behind the line of contact. This isn't some miracle. It's advanced technologies that our BPS can't copy. Let others spill the details. They'll sound smart. Right now, The Ukrainian success is local. It's a consequence of greed from one of the deputies. Infrastructure was hacked. FPV air defense elements were knocked out. If ours restore it and approach info security with brains, the breach can be closed, and it needs to be. It's a question of competence, and that's where it's tough, especially when people really want money. Moving on. So what did the Ukrainians hit in terms of these larger targets overnight? The Syrskyi oil refinery is at the top of the list. Kavkaz port infrastructure, as we've heard, hit. So the oil refinery at Syrskyi has been hit a number of times previously. It's got an annual processing volume of 6.25 million tons a year. So it's a pretty fair-sized refinery. In addition, damage was inflicted on the infrastructure of the Kavkaz port in the Syrskyi area. Again, I have to say, I just get a sense of a turning point. A footage of the burning Syrskyi refinery filmed from dozens of kilometers away. In other words, that's burning brightly, if I can see it, dozens of kilometers away. Ukraine continues to enact its own sanctions against Russia, says Tim White in Krasnodar region. The Syrskyi refinery looks like it's had a visit from a drone. Analyzing the fire there, Supernova says that there is a fire in one of the columns and a gas leak from the processing rack. The unit is considered a key component of the plant where the oil refining process begins. There are about 40 drones attacking Ukraine, though, last night. Well, actually, there were many, many more that attacked Ukraine, but we've heard about them already. Here we have War Translated saying it looks like the Ukrainian drones hit the key AT-22-24 processing unit at the refinery. Video shows column burning and gas leaking from the pipeline crack, where this is where oil refining starts, says Exile Nova, showing videos of the burning Syrskyi oil refinery. In fact, Kyiv Independent talk about this as well in a separate article. Ukraine confirmed strike on major southern Russian oil refinery. The refinery is one of the largest processing facilities in southern Russia, producing gasoline, diesel fuel, and gas condensate distillates, heavy petroleum residues, and sulfur. Local residents reported hearing dozens of explosions around 1 a.m. local time as air defense systems were activated and sirens sounded across the region. The strike damaged part of the refinery from falling drone debris, local authorities claimed, of course, adding that no casualties were reported. Kyiv confirmed that a hit on the target has been recorded. The plant processes roughly 6.25 million tons of crude annually, about 2% of Russia's refining output, and has been repeatedly targeted in previous attacks. Russia's MOD said air defenses intercepted and destroyed 87 drones overnight across multiple regions. Kyiv Independent could not independently verify the claim, so on and so forth. And here is the firm data of Syrskyi. So it definitely was majorly on fire, but apparently the Russians intercepted everything. So, there's nothing to see here. Nothing to see here at all. Things aren't burning. Don't worry about it. It's not on fire. It's not on fire. Port of Kavkaz in Russia's Krasnodar region was also hit overnight. An oil depot is located at that port, and you can see various videos of things being shot at, things blowing up, and that is in Krasnodar at the Kavkaz port. And then we have, what do we have? Yeah, Ukrainian drone struck a major Russian chemical plant with over 600 miles from the border. Uralchem, so I reported on this yesterday, the facility produces ammonium nitrate used in explosives. Now, if that's how far it is away, we haven't heard too much about this, possibly because it's quite a long way away from, by the looks of it, anywhere, in the middle of nowhere. So it's potentially quite difficult for there to be lots of information about this, because the people running the factory will be keeping OPSEC, and the government will not want to advertise this happening. So it these situations rely on locals doing a good deed and putting whatever footage they record onto the internet so that we can access it. Russians trying to put a stop to that. I mean, I don't know, they've done it for that reason, but they have closed down the internet for a couple of weeks. Explosions are being heard in Tolyatti overnight. Local residents reported several loud noises in the area of the Kubyashev Azot chemical plant. This is one that was targeted the other night. Earlier this week, a fire broke out at the same plant after a drone attack. So that appears to have been attacked again. We see this quite a bit with the Ukrainians, that they are going for subsequent attacks on the same places, which I think is very wise, as air defenses are weakened or exhausted. But you kind of need to do it in fairly quick succession. A heavy bomber of the Ukrainian armed forces, this is a heavy bomb of it, covered the Russian armed forces ammunition warehouse. Don't know where that is, but an ammunition warehouse of the Russians is blowing up somewhere. There is another bit of footage of what's, goodness me, looks to be in a spot above that building. And then we hear this morning or this afternoon now that Novorossiysk has been targeted potentially again, or that might be the Greek tanker that has been hit. Yesterday's drone strike on Trypilska oil terminal, this really significant oil terminal in Krasnodar region, burned out 2 storage tanks, according to Dnipro OSINT reporting. Good news there. And indeed, we hear that Ukrainian sanctions, the defense forces struck, the Makop airfield, as already mentioned, in the Republic of Adjia. General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has said preliminary reports indicate hits on airfield infrastructure. Updated results of the strike on the Kremlin L factory. This is a microelectronics factory whereby the Russians have summoned the ambassadors for the UK and France. The main production building where integrated circuits for ballistic cruise surface-to-air missiles are manufactured was hit. A fire broke out approximately 1,000 square meters. The roof was destroyed. A warehouse storing components for microchip production has also been hit, with a fire covering around 400 square meters. Production of the facility is expected to be suspended for about 6 months. Wow. 6 months for the Kremlin L microelectronics factory, upon which one presumes the production of Iskanders is dependent, and other missiles. I mean, that could be a really significant hit for the Ukrainians. Right. Before I go on to the few bits I have for the hits and losses, just to let you know, because I have talked about this already, but a really quick synopsis for the video I did earlier today, because it's significant. Trump has come out on Putin's side again, sort of justified Russia assisting Iran to try and target American personnel and equipment. In one of the most disgusting moments in US history, Trump defends Putin helping Iran kill American troops. Quote, "In all fairness, they do it and we do it." And he was questioned, why is Iran helping? Sorry, is Russia helping Iran? And Trump basically accepts that they are, downplays it, but then says, well, can't really blame them. We're helping Ukraine. Oh my goodness. So he has in public justified another nation giving information to an enemy to try and kill American troops. And he's sat there and says, well, in all fairness, they're bound to do that, rather than give a strong, robust response. It's getting to this ridiculous position where, I don't know, this image, I think, speaks volumes to me. But there you go. Now, this is as the US has relieved sanctions, justified Russia helping Iran. He sent Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to Moscow for the 9th time. They haven't visited Kyiv once. And he's also said, we don't need any help from Ukraine for drones. Thank you very much. We've got the best drone technology in the world. It's the idea. We can't rely on anyone for help, because that would show weakness. So therefore, we don't need help. Ukraine isn't helping us, even though the Pentagon has admitted that they are. Trump is just spinning his own yarn there. Zelensky responded to Trump's refusal to help Ukraine counter Iranian drones, saying, quote, "Rhetoric is rhetoric. The main thing is that we know what we're doing." Yeah, I'm glad someone does. So yeah, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner going to Russia to appease the Russians, arguably. Friedrich Merz has come out and said it was the wrong decision for the US to relieve sanctions. And he said, we just had a virtual meeting with the G7. 6 out of 7 nations were all up for maintaining pressure on Russia. This is the best way to go about forcing Russia to the negotiating table, screw them over economically. But he said one nation didn't, and unfortunately that nation is the United States. It's a really, I think, overt admission that the United States is working either outrightly for the benefit of Russia or what the hell are they doing? We don't understand what they're doing. Just pretty incredible stuff, right? And then just finally for this area, so the German defense minister has also come out and said he's concerned over the lifting of the sanctions on Russia, saying that that drying up Russian oil revenues is the only way to get Putin to the negotiation table. He says that what Trump is doing at the moment is the opposite. Trump is doing the opposite of what people would imagine a US president to be doing with regard to Russia. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister from Canada, has said that he agrees with Friedrich Merz when Friedrich Merz says that it was wrong for the US to lift sanctions. And then you've got JD Vance just sounding off and being absolutely nuts, as he most often is. Anyway, back to other bits and pieces, though. As sanctions keep targeting Russian oil exports, the largest shadow fleet operator reported massive losses in 2025. Sovcomflot lost $648 million in 2025, which is more than their 424 million profits in all of 2024. With the vessel seizures and drone sanctions expanding, expect losses to grow. So even though the oil is getting turned back on as far as the Russians are concerned, hopefully there's damage that's been done to their oil sector that will not be solved by quickly turning around, quickly relieving these sanctions. Now, I said that the Insider was going to be producing something. I haven't read it yet, but this is something to read over the weekend, I guess. A big piece of investigative journalism outing a Russian assassination group called Center 795. So in Russia, by decision of the General Staff, a secret unit was created for assassinations and sabotage abroad. It was called Center 795 and united the best officers of the FSB and the GUR to conduct operations abroad, including assassinations and kidnapping. It is partially financed by the Kalashnikov concern, with about 500 officers have been selected for the center. The head is Denis Fosenko, a former Alpha officer, but he is pictured shaking hands with the dictator. The organization's activities immediately began with a failure in Colombia. So that's who you're talking about there. One of the officers, Denis Alimov, was arrested there because during the operation, he used Google Translate in correspondence with an accomplice, which allowed the American FBI to gain access to the translations. So yeah, don't think that when you ask Google stuff, nobody's looking at it, I guess. Now, Moscow is now supplying Tehran with advanced tactics and Russian-produced drones to target US allies, says United 24 media, and I kind of talked about this already, but what's interesting here, they have imagery of this Garan 2 that landed in Dubai. And Iran launches Russian drones in latest attacks. That's obviously what should give permission for allies of Ukraine to be particularly hard on Russia, but instead the US appears to be going in the opposite direction. Russia, which began by importing Iranian Shahed 136 drones in 2022, is now sending its own produced Garan 2 versions back to Iran, marking a bi-directional military partnership. Ouch. Russia is also reportedly helping Iran apply drone tactics developed during the war in Ukraine. Vital for the Iranians here, as they're up against the wall, getting hammered by the might of the American and Israeli bombing runs, or capabilities. It's just such a hot mess, this whole thing, and everything that Trump says at the moment just makes him look like he is complicit in the war against Ukraine. Zelensky said, "I'd like someone to say thank you for Ukrainian assistance in the Middle East." Ouch. Very pointed comment here, of course, because when he was in the White House for that ambush meeting, JD Vance and Trump had to go at him for just not saying thank you. At the same time, the president stated that he doesn't expect gratitude for assistance with drones. you know, just making a point there. Zelensky's maybe he's being a bit bolder these days. Trump and I aren't the same age. Maybe because of that, he sees our relationship like father and son. You think he sees you as his son? Zelensky replied, I don't know. Maybe not his favorite son, but why not? I love that. Yeah, I think he treats me like his son. You know, the one that he hates. That son. Yeah, yeah. And then finally, I just thought I would play this in answer to that video I did earlier and that I've just referenced again, this idea that unfortunately the Trump administration is taking the United States in the wrong direction. And for someone like James O'Brien, that looks very much like the United States is now an ally of Russia that is aligned itself with Russia. That's super concerning. So let's listen to James O'Brien on LBC radio. It's been sort of kind of sliced together here to get the same points that he said multiple times in different parts of the conversation.
The United States of America is an ally of Russia. What does it mean for the United States to be now essentially an ally of Vladimir Putin's Russia? Russia signs deals with Donald Trump's United States of America designed to enrich both of them. The days of sanctions bringing oligarchs to their knees, the hopes of Putin being toppled by internal pressure brought about by financial penalties being inflicted upon his cronies who have robbed their own country blind are completely over. I haven't spoken to my friend Bill Browder about this yet, but those rapidly growing hopes that sanctions upon oligarchs were going to achieve the unthinkable and actually get the monstrous man out of the Kremlin, those are now disappearing over the horizon with every utterance from the Oval Office. The United States of America.
So there you go. That's an opinion of someone in the UK there commenting on this. And just, I guess, like relevant to this whole discussion, Zelensky has now announced an arms barter between Russia and Iran. Kremlin supplies Iran with weapons and finances military programs with energy revenues. In return, Tehran transfers technology and drones to Russia. Ukraine is already sharing experience in countering Iran's Shahed with partners. But yeah, the relationship between Russia and Iran is a working relationship, and it is taking place now. Okay, that's enough from me. There was so much to go through. Things are getting blown up left, right, and center every day. The Ukrainians are just doing more and more of this stuff on a daily basis, and it's really good news, I think, for those who are supportive of Ukraine. That's enough from me. Take care. Speak to you soon.